everyone. Today we will be starting out on page 8 with multiplication. So if you have not already done so, please pause the video, grab your binder, and open up to page 8. And once you have done that, we can get started on our notes for today. Alright, so our first line that we are going to read is define multiplication. Multiplication, we are going to use the definition of group of things. So group of. This is also repeated addition. If you run out of room, that's okay. So repeated addition is like 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. But that's also 2 times 3. 2 groups of 3. Or 3 groups of 2. Our next line here says, to understand multiplication integers, it is helpful to also think of the negative sign as meaning the opposite. So negative sign, opposite. All right? So let's do an example. 2 times 4. So when you have parentheses, that means multiplication. You could also write it as 2 times 4 with an X or 2.4. Those are all types of ways for multiplication. If you want to put that at the top right here, you could say multiply. You have parentheses, you have a times, and then you have a dot. But those are just different ways to write it. If you already know that, that's awesome. So with this, we have, and this is how I'm going to write it with the groups of. We have 2 groups of 4. So when I have this, I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to look at the back first to determine how many things I have in my group. And in this instance, I have groups of 4. So I'm going to have a group of 4. That's one group. And then however many groups I have is by the front number. So I have 2 of them. So I got to make one more group of 4 to have 2 groups. All right, moving on. So down here, explain what 2 times negative 4 means. Well, that means I have 2 groups of negative 4. All right. So if I was going to plot that on my number line, I'm going to start, that is not my 0. I'm going to start at 0. This says I have groups of negative 4. So I'm going to start at negative 4. That's one group. And then this first number here says how many groups I have. And I have 2. So I'm going to make one more group. I end up at negative 8. All right. Last problem on this page 8. It says I have negative 2 times 4. Ooh, this negative right here means I'm going to have the opposite. So I'm going to have the opposite of 2 groups of 4. Okay? So I'm going to go on my number line. I'm going to graph my 0. It says I have groups of 4, so I'm going to go group of 4 right here. Here's one group. It says I got 2 groups, so I'm going to go one more. Here's my 2 groups. But since it says the opposite of whatever I just did, I'm going to have to go the whole opposite way. Here's my opposite line. And I will end up with negative 8. All right. If we flip the page to page 9, we are also still going to practice. So top of page 9, what does negative 2 times negative 4 mean? Well, that means I have the opposite of 2 groups of -4. So I'm going to start at my 0, go -4. Here's one group. Says I have 2 groups, so I'm going to go one more. Now I got to go opposite of whatever I just did, and I will end up at 8. All right, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. We will now go on to practice of using your number line to multiply. All right, so if you want to try this on your own, that is awesome. If you are still a little bit confused on what we are doing, that's okay. Come with me to go through these problems. If you're doing it on your own, I will have the answers after I go through them, so you can always unpause the video and see if you are on the right track. All right, so we're going to start with number 1 right here. So remember, the back number says how many groups I have. I'm going to do it in blue. So I start at my 0. I got group of 2. Here's my first group. Remember, this 3 now says how many I have. So I have 1, 2, 3 groups. And I should have a 6. Going on to number 2 in 3, 2, 1. This back number says I have -3 in my group, so I'm going to go -3. That's my first group. This front number says how many I got, so I'm going to go one more to get in my group of 2. My answer is -6. Moving on to number 3 and 3, 2, 1. This back number says how many I have in my group, so I have 2 in a group. This 5 says how many times I got to jump, so 1 time, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, but this negative in front means I've got to do the opposite. So I'm going to go start at my 0 and go the complete opposite way. And I should get -10. Moving on to number 4 in 3, 2, 1. I got -3 as my starting group. That's my first group. I got 2 of them, so I'm going to do one more. And I see a negative in front of my 2, so I'm going to go the complete opposite way that I just went. And I should get a +6. All right, if you flip the page, we're going to go on to number 5 on the other side. 5 says I got 1 person in my group, so I got 1. I got to do that 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and if I had to label this, and I should end up at 7 right here. All right, starting number 6 in 3, 2, 1. I got -$3 in my pocket, so I'm going to have -3. That's my first group. And I'm going to buy 3 items like this. So that's 1 item, 2 items, 3 items, and I should get -9 that I have to spend if I was doing a word problem. All right, going on to number 7 in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to be having a group of 2, and that's my first group. This means I'm going to have 3 of those groups. And remember, my negative says I'm going to do the complete opposite of whatever I just did. So if I went positive, I'm actually a negative. Going on to number 8 in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to start at my 0. I got -1. So here's my first group. Says I do it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And I see that negative right in all front. So that means I'm going to go the complete opposite to get 4. All right, last one right here. I'm going to start number 9 in 3, 2, 1. If I start at my 0, got -3. It's my first group. I'm going to do that 3 times. That's my second, third. And I see a negative sign in the very front. That means I'm going to do the complete opposite. And I should get +9. So it's like saying I spent $3 on one item, and I have 3 of the same item because maybe I'm making buying muffins for $3, so I spend $9, but I did not eat them and I return them. So that's what this opposite means in the very front. I return them, so I get my $9 back instead of spending them. All right, if you flip to the next page, the only one I'm going to really emphasize on page number 11 is that when we think of the negative sign, remember it is the opposite of whatever you think it is. All right. I'm not going to make you think about all this, but if we have, in conclusion, if you have an even number of opposites, you should be back where you started. Okay? And if you have an odd number of opposites, you should be the opposite of the start. So for example, if we look down here at the simplify, I have 1, 2, 3. That's an odd number, so that means I have a -1. So it's like saying these two cancel out. Remember how I said negatives can cancel each other out? So it's like those two negatives cancel out, and I am left with one single negative left. How did we determine that? Well, it's an odd number. If we want to simplify these two cancel out each other, these two cancel out, we should get a positive number. So we're back at the start because of an even number of opposites. All right, if we flip the page to page 12, this is our last page here of notes. The beginning says, when multiplying two integers with the same sign, that means we will get a positive number. So for example, if I have 2 times 2, you'll get a +4. If I have -2 times -2, you'll still get your +4. All right, so that's what I mean by example. Next one, when you multiply two integers with different signs, you'll get a negative number. So for example, if I have 2 times -2, you'll get a -4 because there's no extra negative to cancel out. The inverse, that means the opposite of multiplication, is division. Just like how addition and subtraction are opposite of each other, the inverse, division and multiplication are inverse, opposite of each other. Therefore, when dividing two numbers with the same sign, you are going to get a positive number, a positive. So for example, if I have 8 divided by 4, you'll get a +2. However, when dividing integers with different signs, you'll get a negative answer. So for example, if I have -8 divided by 4, you'll get a -2. Same thing, if I get 8 divided by -4, you'll still get a -2. All right, let's quickly practice this. So I have 8 divided by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now I gotta check my signs. I got a positive in the front and a negative in the back. So I have a positive, negative. Those are different signs. That means I get a negative answer. All right, going on to number 2. 20 divided by 5 is 4. I see a negative and a negative, so I see 2 negatives. They are of the same sign. That means I'm going to get a positive answer. Right? So, I guess problem 2, part 2. 18 divided by 3 is 6. I see a -18 and a +3, which are different signs. So I should get a negative answer. I see a +36 divided by a +12. And 36 divided by 12 is 3. But 2 of the same sign is going to be a positive number. All right, so to recap, I'm going to be putting these on the notes on the very bottom, just to recap, because this is a lot of notes that you can read. We did a lot of note taking. I'm just going to summarize it now, okay? So if I have, so this is multiplication. If I have a positive times a positive, you'll get a positive number. If I have a positive times a negative number, I'll get a negative number. And you can flip these two around. I could have a negative times a positive and still get a negative. And if I get a negative times a negative, you'll get a positive. If I had to do division, okay, if I have a positive divided by a positive, you'll get a positive. If I have a positive divided by a negative, you'll get a negative. If I have negative divided by a positive, negative, because those are two different signs, right? And then if I do a negative divided by a negative, you get a positive. So these rules are actually the same. If you have the same sign, positive, positive, negative, negative, they all equal positive. But if you have two different signs, negative and positive, positive and negative, you'll get a negative. All right, so these are all for your notes. On the same Google Classroom assignment, underneath another link should be to a Gimkit, okay? That is your homework, that is your independent time, all right? So you need to pull up your Google Classroom, click on the Gimkit, and complete that. If you have finished the Gimkit, you are to do Dreambox, okay? So don't rush. If you have any questions, please ask a friend, ask the sub. You can always save your questions for when I come back.